take those words or those actions and turn the energy into something good?
You know, things are so rough now. I hate to even try to give advice. I think it's something that's going to have. They are going to have to be creative themselves and come up with something that worked for their situation. Because I don't think what we did would work in this situation that we are in now.
Mr. Cotton, why, what was the impetus to write your memoir? I mean, have you been writing this for many years, or what caused you to decide to set this down on paper and share your story with all of us?
Well, I'm the second generation, a part of the second generation of non-enslaved in my family. My grandfather, of course, was enslaved. My grandmother was enslaved. And my parent and the people around me talked about the various stories and things that happened in their families, around their family, but never, I saw very little of it being recorded anywhere. You know, there were a few books nationwide, maybe Du Bois and other people, but just our story hardly ever was told. So I wasn't so much thinking about this book. I more was trying to make sure that I recorded the family history that had been passed down to me that was going to get lost because I'm like the youngest, near the youngest of that whole generation, and nobody, if I didn't pass it on, it would be passed on. So I did it for Stephanie and other siblings, younger part of the family, that there be some kind of marker. You know, there's so much that I didn't do, but at least I feel that there is something there that they can, it's some kind of benchmark, so to speak, that they can spring from and do other research and whatever.
Did you know that you were making history when you were doing all the things you were doing during the movement, or did it?
Did I know what?
Did you realize you were making history, or did you ever imagine that your name would be in history for kids to learn about later?
Exactly. I guess it's the opposite. Getting your name in history at that time was a deadly proposition. So, anybody who was serious about what we were doing, you didn't bother about trying to get your name publicized because that was a target on your back. So, no, I didn't think about that. And it wasn't about that. It wasn't about history. It was about the past and the present and trying to make the future, I guess, in that sense, history, trying to make it more conducive to what I thought it should be, the kind of life I thought I wanted.
To elaborate on that, a part of the things that we discovered in going through his manuscripts with our family was his mother and father were actually listed, for those who know about the Sovereignty Commission. So getting your name on certain lists was definitely not something you wanted to do. So imagine me not knowing them and seeing that they were just preachers and teachers. They just wanted to have a quality education and equal rights for their children and grandchildren to have. And the government basically marked them as terrorists. So always being in the forefront was not necessarily a thought. It is just like, I want those that are descending from me to do better and have better. So it wasn't always the best thing to be in the forefront, but for me to have that now, especially for me and my daughter, because my grandfather passed before I was born. So my granduncles and aunts are all I have. So to be able to sit there and see the poll tax receipts from my great-great-grandparents and to see what my uncles and aunts were doing. We had the conversation earlier about all of them going and attending HBCUs, where on the other side of my family, they barely made it through elementary school. So it's a vast dichotomy on both sides of what could and couldn't be done when certain things were held back from us at that particular time.
Stephanie, can I ask you, like, when did you become aware of your uncle's involvement? And you said you looked at manuscripts and stuff, so you must have done some research, and there must have been shared among the family. But did you know this when you were growing up, or when you became an adult, or?
I was an adult. I was the nosy child in the family. Our family was real big. Many of my summers and weekends with my father's family was spent at his house. And his house is basically where my great-grandparents raised them. So imagine being a kid that loves to read and is nosy. And it's just this room full of books and full of papers. And I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna get them in order one day. And this is 20. I have my own kid, and I'm starting to get into the family genealogy. And I want to say it was probably a little bit before COVID that he finally sat me down in the kitchen, him and one of his other brothers who's passed on, and they pull out these bins and boxes. And it's all of these actual receipts, transcripts from their high school years and college years. And like I said, the poll tax receipts, we have the actual copies. So it's a difference when you're reading it in a book than when you see it for yourself and it's connected to your family. Like his high school diploma has his father's name as an administrator on it. Like that means something different. I live probably not even a quarter mile from the high school that was the former black high school that's now an empty building that the students and alumni from that school have taken over. And they use that building for our community. My great-grandparents lived right down the road from what was Central Mississippi College, because at that time, traveling to Jackson to go to school to a HBCU was unfathomable for most people. So those colleges sent people in to Kosciuszko, to that local college. And a part of that local college is their charter that our family still has. So it's one thing to hear those stories, it's enough to see it. And the more we research the family, the more we tie things back to Kosciuszko. So when we say that's home, that's really home. Our family church was founded in 1876 or 78?
1890.
Yeah, 1890. So it's
1860.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest churches in Atala County. So to us it's talking about family, but to other people it is history. So I live less than a mile from the oldest city cemetery. One of the stories I was just telling a young lady online in one of our history forums, the ladies that founded Delta Gamma are all from Kosciuszko. I drive right past the Delta Gamma Memorial Room every day, going to town to my local bank to City Hall. It's a lot of history steeped in Kosciuszko, and we just wanted our part one day to be able to be told with everybody else. I think we were getting ready for the family reunion in, I want to say 2018, because we have a system, so everything goes in order to when it comes back home. And I got really excited, and I actually got a chance to surprise him to go into the city and getting the proclamation done. So we're recognized as one of the first families of Kosciuszko, because right as they're celebrating their, I think, bicentennial is our family reunion. So his second, so I want to say my fifth great-grandmother, either my fourth or my fifth great-grandmother was one of the oldest residents in Kosciuszko. She was a formerly enslaved woman born in 1802. So whereas most people who can't get past the 1870 or 1860 wall, we have these records of those people in place. And both sides of my family are from Atala County. I tell everybody I'll never be able to date because I'm related to the whole county. So when your family is steeped in history, sometimes that's all you have is what your family has. We're blessed that some of his family, our family on his mother's side, and that's the one thing I love that I appreciate with my great-grandmother. She believed in keeping records. I love hearing those stories that not only was she a teacher in Atala County, she taught in Philadelphia, she taught in Kemper County. Education followed them wherever they went. And along with that was records. So I loved pulling those old marriage licenses, those census records. I tell people, start with your own family, because you'll be a lot more interested in history when you know where your family ties into that story. So it started with us, and it managed to expound to something so much larger and so much bigger. And along the way, learning what they did, I got to learn what he did. It's like, in my mind, I'm just a little girl that I just like to go to the country and play on the family land, not knowing what all my ancestors went through to get this land. So it's been a nice little journey, and hopefully it'll continue to pass on.
Mr. Cotton, I understand that you took part in the freedom rides. Is that correct? You were.
Yes, I guess you could say so.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about kind of how you took part in?
Well, I was didn't actually go for that ride.
Mm-hmm.
I helped Thomas Gaither, who was sent to organize for the Freedom Ride. Mm-hmm. And I worked with him to in the logistical stuff to make sure that people had places to stay. Mm-hmm. When they got out of prison, they were able to go back home, etc. Mm-hmm. And of course, I went and did tests. I think that was the 1st of November when they said that we would test. I think the administration said that they were gonna, if they end the Freedom Ride, they would make sure by November 1st or something that they would finally make the public accommodation. No, what was that? ICC, and it related to interstate commerce and interstate transportation. So Kennedy said that they were going to make sure that it happens, I think November the 1st. So we tested that in Macomb. And of course, I ran into a little trouble there, and they got in the paper, and my mother was teaching, and she was fired, even though I was past 18, but she was fired from her job up in Kosciuszko for somebody hit me in Macomb. So, which was, I guess that was my Freedom Ride experience.
And you talked a little bit there about the consequences. Your mother was fired. Was there ever a time when you thought that the risks of what you were doing outweighed any action that you were taking, or were you just committed to the action?
I guess in a way you would say yes and no, because I knew from a child, that what we were doing was deadly. Mm-hmm. Because they made sure they proved that every day, and find people, running people out of town, etc. I knew families who had been run out of town for little or nothing. So I guess you could say yes, but on the other hand, how can you accept slavery? I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. So I don't think I had a choice.
I would also say, to elaborate, it's kind of hard to accept that place, even though you know it's dangerous and you know it's harmful. But I still see people able to move across the country, build schools, help people learn. Like, we know the benefits of what our family was doing at the time. So it's like, yes, it's dangerous, but we just built another school. We just helped another 20, 30, 40, 60 kids learn how to read and write. And if you've gotten a chance to flip through the book, a part of that, which he'll tell you now, he don't too much do, He was really good in math. So in the process of going through the freedom schools at that time, he was not participating in the riots. He was teaching at the freedom schools. So he was teaching kids math. And it's like, I'm from Mississippi and I know this. Why is a child in New Jersey struggling with this? Why are black children in Pennsylvania struggling with this? We're thinking that, oh, they're telling us that, oh, it's separate but equal. But we know it's not. But even on the planes of what we're able to learn and establish, other people don't have. Now, he was blessed enough to have a mother that was a teacher, a Jeans teacher for those that are in education. It's something to really read up on. But imagine having somebody speaking Latin on the regular in your household. I couldn't imagine, and I graduated in 2001. I mean, my daughter just graduated from Mississippi State this past spring, and she don't know the lick of Latin. But when you see the harshness of it, and then you see the benefits of it, you're kind of stuck in this kind of ebb and flow of what could be and what's not. And you kind of want to see more of what could be.
And with the current administration, how do you feel, do you still feel kind of optimistic about how things are going, or do you feel that, you know, maybe some of the work that you did back in the 60s is being undone?
Yeah, how can we just vote whatever the other people, the right the other people had to vote? How can we just have that right? You know, when you think about that, you know that was a trick from the get. Oh, well, we're going to put another piece of paper over here and give you a little rights. And of course, most people didn't think about it. All of those had a time on it to, okay, 10 years, 10 years of this voting opportunity. What's wrong with just having the right to vote, like it says in the Constitution, forever? You know? So we knew, the struggle hadn't been completed. So I wasn't surprised. I tell you what I'm surprised at. I'm surprised at the citizens of the United States. I did not think that they would fall for what we are falling for. And that's what surprised me. I knew that there were those out there would do it, but I didn't think the masses of so many would fall for such mess.
I have a question. You were talking about staying motivated and trying to look at the wins. You've always been kind of aware of the dangers and that the fight's got to keep on fighting. But how did you keep your spirits up during that time? How did you support yourself when you're seeing this and having to go through that for so long?
I guess I didn't have a choice. What the opposite looks like. I either could fight for better or accept worse. So I had to try to fight for better. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Because growing now, it wasn't like, you sit down every night and say, well, I'm gonna get up and do this and do that. It's almost your daily activity.
Mm-hmm.
We meet the opposition practically every day. So how do you deal with that opposition? Or how do you try to defend yourself against the terror? So it's just almost a way of life. And you can, you determine that, well, I can be submissive or try to be progressive.
Yeah, it was like you felt like you had no other choice, that was what you had to do to keep on moving. Did it impact you emotionally at all, though?
Of course. But I imagine if I would have accepted the other, I suppose I would probably would have already been dead.
Yeah.
And I know I've been emotionally destroyed to accept, you know, that kind of oppression willingly. I'm sure it would have destroyed me soon.
Thanks. I have a question. So, when you think about your experiences and what it was like growing up then and kind of persevering and fighting for equity and freedom then, and you look at where we are now in this country with this current administration, my thought to you would be like, what advice do you have to someone who champions equity from a healthcare perspective, like I do, and works very hard to, you know, for diversity, equity, and inclusion within neurosurgery and within healthcare? What advice do you have for someone like me and all of my colleagues who are working towards this common goal in this current administration?
Don't have any advice any more than fight the power. Because you're definitely gonna lose if you don't. And this has been, I mean, we act like, you know, this has just happened, but for the last so many years, there has been a consistent effort of cutting back all kind of progressive things, you know, all kind of help. And then once they finally passed the affordable health care thing, oh my goodness, like the worst thing ever happened in the world. And I think we who benefited from that should, maybe it's what we deserve, because we should have been fighting harder to protect it instead of sitting, you know, as if we, you know, overcome, so to speak. Instead of continuing the struggle, even back as I was talking about the voting, you know, when we saw that we only got a temporarily right to vote, we could have kept on fighting until we got a full right to vote. When we got the schools open, should have continued to make sure that every child, you know, who probably didn't have the same means you had, make sure that they had also opportunity for education, opportunity for economic, you know, well, jobs or whatever. You know, but many of us got our jobs and forgot about, we left half of the rest of the people behind. So basically, I think might be what we deserve, when we should have been making sure that we continued, like those people before me, who at great odds, you know, getting killed and stuff, but they didn't quit. They continued trying to make things a little better for us. And look like we got to a point, we got to a standstill and said, they are there. Even some of them tell you, they should pull up by their own bootstraps, even though they know they didn't have no boots, but we had that, we developed those attitudes. So that's what selfishness causes. And selfishness is never a good strategy, because it's always, it's a cancer that is eating on you too, wherever you are. I might have missed your question, but I'm sorry.
No, you answer. You say keep fighting the good fight. Just keep going. That's all we can do.
And it's really to a point where we have to start to think that it's always going to be in spite of. Always going to be a form of domestic terrorism. It's always going to be a part of governmental infrastructure breakdown somewhere. And you know, a lot of us in the African American community are raised that we have to be twice as good to get a piece of what everybody else is getting. So we learn to operate in spite of. Like what's going on with my college at Jackson State, we can't deal with the IHL. It's never going to be fully funded. We're never going to get what everybody else gets, but we still manage to do it in spite of. So those people that are fighting for equal rights for women in healthcare and education, we have to do it in spite of. We know what everybody else is doing, but are we doing our part? Are we speaking up for ourselves? Are we speaking up for the children? I volunteer at my local Boys and Girls Club. I pray for those babies every day. And I get asked every day, well, I want you to get in the school system. I can't. Because my heart and my emotionality won't let me. But I can help those babies as much as I can, in spite of what's going on. And we have to seem to kind of claw our way out of, like he said, it's going to continue. We saw it happening in bits and pieces. Every breakdown we've had for women's rights, healthcare, education, the prosperity of illegal immigrants, we saw it happening. But now they allowed it to happen in such small pieces that we sat back and took the small pieces while they got together and formed a big ball and wrecked it as much as they can, because they saw, well, they can handle it in small pieces. If we attack them all at once, what can they do? So we have to learn to stop being fractions and get together as a whole.
How do we get together as a whole? I mean,
That's the hard part.
There's the problem.
Because the
Us
vision,
learning how to communicate,
yes.
and how to
Yes.
support all of us.
Yes.
as a
And that's the
community.
hard part. And division and communication, I tell everybody, the biggest thing I gave my daughter was a voice in her home. Because if your child doesn't have a voice in their home, how can they have a voice in the street? How can they have a voice in the school? If you don't have a voice or a say-so in the fight that you're fighting, you are wasting your time. So if I can't communicate on the basic level with the people in my household, how can I communicate with the government? Like I said, I went to school in the 90s and 2000s. Every club I was in taught parliamentary procedure and Robert's Rules of Order. And I sit in meetings in our city hall and our schools. Nothing's in order. There's no agenda. The basic things that we took for granted are nowhere in sight anymore. So until we basically try to work on communicating better and working out our divisiveness, we won't ever get on one accord. Because the people that are working against us, oh, they're all on one team. Like they have their agenda set, everything is ready, they know what to do.
And corrupt.
And I was always taught that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And corrupt.
So until we manage to get ourselves in order, we're gonna find ourselves going through the same thing over and over again in bits and pieces and fractions.
Well, thank you so much for writing this book and sharing your story with us. And as we discussed tonight, I think it's important to know the history, especially when the history's been taken out of the schools. And this is a part of the solution to that, and to inspire all the rest of us to deal with today, and to finish maybe what you started. That's ambitious. But
I mean, you gotta have ambitions for it to be ambitious for things to move.
you're right. Yeah, I agree. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.